Welcome into Super Bowl week, another edition of the Install with Greg Cosell of NFL Films. Greg, you made it. Congratulations to you. Congratulations to the Chiefs and Eagles. The finish line is well within everybody's grasp, and I don't think we could ask for a better game than the one we're going to finish the season with.
You know, it's funny because I know that I'm going to get asked. I mean, certainly over the next number of days, particularly in Phoenix when I'm there, as you know, who do I think is going to win the game? Which as you know, to me, that's the least important thing of what I do. But everybody's going to want to know that, and I'm really having a hard time, Buck, trying to figure out who I think is going to win. I think there's so many variables in this game, and I guess you could say that theoretically about any Super Bowl. But for some reason, I'm struggling to kind of get a handle on this because the variables keep just spinning around in my brain.
Well, and it does seem like Super Bowl analysis that way. You can just talk yourself into circles, right? By the time the game finally gets here.
Yeah.
Because you're right, there are so many interesting variables to this particular game. But we're here to talk about matchups. Don't worry, no score predictions from me, Greg. Looking at this game between what we have, the Philadelphia Eagles on offense, Jalen Hurts is healthy as he's going to be heading into this game, dealing with the shoulder situation. The team itself looking like it's in pretty sound shape, especially the offensive line that's been so overwhelming all year long, and a Kansas City Chiefs defense that may not have necessarily all the star power that the Eagles do on that side of the ball, but is still stout at times and obviously has a guy like Chris Jones who can make a play at any point.
Yeah, and I know, obviously the Eagles O-line arguably the best in the league, and we saw when they played the Niners there were individual plays where it just seemed like they mauled guys who were 315 320 pounds. We can all probably visualize Javon Kinlaw just being moved, Armstead being moved, individual plays where it just looked bad if you were a fan of the 49ers. And I'm sure they'll have some of those plays again. I'm struggling with the idea that they're just going to dominate, though, and maybe they will. And, I think much depends on the Hurts factor, because with Hurts, when he's in the gun, which is 99% of the snaps, when you're in a normal down and distance situation, 1st and 10, 2nd and 4, there's so many different plays that can come from Hurts being in the gun with an offset back. And for all we know, they just make a play call, because look, this whole idea that a quarterback is, when the ball snapped, is choosing one of 4 plays as the ball snapped. That's just not true. That's impossible to do. So they could simply call a play, but because of formation, because of the Hurts factor, you're getting the defense aligned in certain ways. You're getting them reacting to certain things. So it's really difficult. That's one reason why the Eagles' run game, Buck, has been so good this year, because there's so many things that can come from Hurts in the gun with an offset back that it's just hard for the defense. So not only do they have a big, strong, powerful offensive line, you look at Mailata at left tackle, Dickerson at left guard, that's 700 pounds a man on one side. I mean, that's a lot of big.
A lot of beef.
Yeah, a lot of big. And so not only do they have that physical capability, but they're very schematic, as I said. So it is a very difficult run game to defend. And then you have all the pass elements that can work off of it, because you get a lot of one-on-one coverage and you get a lot of off coverage with Devonta Smith and with A.J. Brown. So it's a very difficult offense to defend.
Well, and that's the thing that I've been curious about, just kind of as he's been dealing with the shoulder injury, Hurts in particular.
Yeah.
It hasn't affected their offensive production wholesale, but just generally his willingness as a runner as of late, and how much they can utilize that as a tool at any given point when he's right. I at least, Greg, to the untrained eye, kind of making some notes, going back and watching these games, I felt that I saw a little bit less of that from Jalen Hurts in the last couple of weeks. And I didn't know if that had been your observation as well, but clearly it's not bothering them.
Well, I don't think he's played as well since the injury. I know that sounds odd to say, but I've also spoken to some people in the organization, and he has not played as well. Like I said, it sounds crazy because they beat the Giants, 38-7. They beat the Niners, but in a crazy game because the Niners lost their quarterback. But they've had 2 essential blowouts. But Hurts has not played as well, and their pass game has been somewhat limited, which is interesting, because you would think, hey, it's more the run game because he didn't want to, fall on the shoulder and get hurt. But The pass game has been limited, and hey, could be a function of the games to some degree. But you know me, when I look at quarterbacks, I'm looking at them individually in a vacuum. You know, obviously the Eagles have a very good team, you know, arguably the most talented team overall in the NFL. So they're very, very good. But if you just isolate the play of Hurts, he's not thrown the ball as well as he did before the injury.
Looking at we've talked about the well, and throwing the ball in particular, I know there were a couple of inaccuracies in that game against the 49ers. As you mentioned, what will, I mean, we know what Kansas City's defense is. We've talked about Steve Spagnuolo a million different times, but would you expect, or what would you kind of think their approach to defending this Eagles offense might be, given what we know about them as a defense and how many problems, as you said, that the Eagles pose in any number of ways?
Well, I think they're really hard to defend in normal down and distance, and I think that's where it's a bit of a struggle, because normally, you know, defenses don't do a lot of their more detailed, nuanced stuff in normal down and distance. You know, you're trying to get the Eagles in long yardage. That's where they've struggled a bit. Even all season, the Eagles on 3rd and 7+, even with Hurts, the Eagles have not been really good when you get to long yardage. You know, because that's where the drop back pass game is a bigger factor. You know, all the other things that they do with the run game elements go away when it's 3rd and 9. You know, so now you're getting into the drop back game, and as good as Hurts has been this year, that's still where he needs a little more work. He's not yet there as in the drop back pass game. So, you know, and that's where Steve Spagnuolo, to quote a coach that I talked to who played against them, against the Chiefs, and knows Spags well, said that, you know, Spags can be a pain in the ass because he brings pressure from everywhere, and you don't know exactly where that's going to be. Now, that pressure has to be somewhat controlled, because obviously Hurts can scramble. You know, and the thing that's really morally damaging to defense is if you get them at 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10, and Hurts runs for 15 yards. You know, those kinds of plays have a feel and an impact beyond just single play, as you know. Right. So, you know, so I'm very curious. I'm not smart enough, and I'm not trying to be sarcastic, to know exactly what Spags is going to do, but I think that you will see some things on 3rd and long, because there will be 3rd and long plays. There are in every game. I'm curious to see what he does, because he's not just going to sit back and play cover 2. Now, he'll play cover 2. That's part of what the Chiefs do, but he's not just going to sit back and do that on every snap.
No, they've got to find ways to heat Jalen Hurts up in this game. And
look, the 49ers did a great job, quite honestly, and they rushed 4 mostly. And what they did is they had their 2 edge rushers rush hard up the field and then stop right when they got to the level of Hurts. I think we mentioned this last week. Yeah. And Hurts, you know, because he was a little uncomfortable, he's not back to where he was, he would break down in the pocket, and he didn't have anywhere to go, so he would release outside. And we saw 4 or 5 times where he just ran to his right and threw the ball away.
A discipline as far as a rushing plan is concerned is something that I think, you know, generally we don't, at least fans don't think of throughout the course of the week, but how critical it can be when you're trying to make a guy like Hurts win from the pocket and see if you can make him uncomfortable in a couple of different ways. Certainly they'll try to do the same thing with the Eagles on the defensive side of things against Patrick Mahomes, a much different offensive line than what Jalen Hurts will be working with, and a very, very ferocious front that we have talked about several different times this year, Greg, in Philadelphia, that Howie Roseman and his staff have done so well to retool and rebuild. What are you looking forward to about seeing from that matchup?
You know, I'm looking for early in the game for the Chiefs to come out and throw the ball very rhythmically, you know, because you don't want to get stuck with that D line getting amped up early. And I think Patrick Mahomes, because it's in his DNA very often to move when he doesn't need to, and oftentimes he'll make great plays when he does that, but at times he can get a little reckless. And I think you want to control that early in the game. And I think you'll see quick game, you'll see RPO, you'll see the ball out of his hands quickly. You'll see them try to frustrate that D line because they're not going to get to him. And I think they'll mix in screens, they'll mix in, you know, some of their, I hate using the word gimmick, because with Andy Reid, it never feels like a gimmick. It feels like it's just, you know, an addition to what they normally do, you know? So I think you'll see some of that. But I think they'll try to channel Mahomes a little bit early, let him get into the flow of the game, and then he'll do, what Patrick Mahomes does. He'll, because it's in his DNA to move. But I think early you want to channel that. Because you don't want him to start with deep drops and feel like the rush is becoming a factor. Look, I can tell you for a fact, people might not remember this, but when they lost to the Bucks, was it 2 or 3 years ago in the
2020.
2020. There you go. There, and I could show you the plays. Everybody just says, "Oh, Bucks D line dominated," and they overall did. But I went through that very carefully, and there were 4 or 5 plays in that game where Mahomes left the pocket early and left throws on the field, including an 85-yard touchdown to Tyreek Hill. And I think Andy's very aware of that. He knows what Patrick is, and Patrick's great. That's not my point. And I hope people don't listen and go, "Oh, you don't like Patrick Mahomes." No, that's not my point at all. But I think you want to get Mahomes into the game, get rid of the football, let him get a feel for the game, and then he can be Patrick Mahomes doing his thing. You don't want to start off the game with him running around. He's going to do that anyway.
Just the idea that somebody, because somebody would out there, lob the criticism of, "Oh, you don't like Patrick Mahomes."
No,
do not listen or watch anything else that people in football talk about.
Yeah, I mean, Mahomes is great. I mean, his spatial awareness is better than I've ever seen. His just ability to see things on the move is maybe the best I've ever seen. He's a great, great player. But that doesn't mean that, they still play games, and you know what? Sometimes they lose. So, there's defenses try to do certain things, and Andy Reid, who's a phenomenal coach, and his staff, they know how they want Patrick to play to his maximum. And I think you'll see them early in the game, try to get Patrick comfortable in the game. And also you'll see some plays early to try to give the Eagles, a sense that, hey, we're going to do some stuff that maybe you haven't seen. And you're going to have to slow down a little bit because we're not just going to play normally.
Well, and the question for me, Greg, I think more than anything, they'll have Clyde Edwards-Helaire back for this game. McCole Hardman's done for the season, it sounds like. A semblance of a run game to just give the Chiefs a bit of balance. It was something that was lacking against the Bengals. They were not, I mean, he was not using his legs a ton, he being Mahomes, but obviously had a critical scramble at the end of the game to also draw the penalty, set up the game-winning field goal. But for the most part, they were not able to establish anything on the ground. How important is that for them, given what we know about the nature of their offense and that quarterback, that they can find ways to win in other ways without having the ground game?
They'll try to run the ball. And I think, when you play against that 5-man front, which the Eagles will show, because keep one thing in mind, there's so much swirling in my brain here, Buck. The Chiefs have really evolved this season into a multiple tight end offense. Throughout the entire season, they played with 2 and 3 tight ends, something like the second highest percentage of any team in the NFL. It's close to 40% when you count 2 and 3 tight end personnel packages. In the AFC Championship game, they were over 50% with 2 and 3 tight ends. And the thing is, they can do that because Kelce, we know, is essentially a wide receiver. Fortson, who's back, he's essentially a wide receiver as well. He was in college. So that raises a question of how you match up to that. Do you match up in your base defense, or do you match up in nickel? That's the first question. The other thing is, if you're going to match up with your 5-man front, which is a base front for the Eagles, it's a base in terms of base defensive personnel, and often they'll play a 5-1 nickel. So they have a 5-man front. The way you want to run against that outside zone is better versus that front than trying to run inside. So they'll try to run the ball, the Chiefs. The question is, will they have success? And the manner of success will dictate the volume. If they're running the ball well, I'm not saying they're going to be a run-first team. It's not like they're trying to take the ball out of Mahomes' hands. But I think if they're having some success, it will continue to be within the game plan. If they're having no success at all, you'll start to see other things. You'll start to see jet sweeps. You'll start to see ways of running the ball that's not traditional.
So, Greg, with you being based in the Philadelphia area, and obviously Andy Reid being such a significant part of both of these franchises' history. I just wanted to kind of get your perspective on how Andy Reid is viewed by the Eagles fans. I think it's such a fascinating thing because I know people are going to do the Kelsey Bowl bit all week long. But
Right.
Andy Reid, I think, as a character in this story, is one of the most interesting, and I'd be curious to get your perspective on his role in this game.
It's hard at this point in time to not understand that Andy Reid's a first ballot Hall of Fame coach. He's won a lot of football games. What is this, his fourth Super Bowl, maybe, I think it is. Win or lose, it's really hard to get to Super Bowls, as you know. Andy Reid is a great coach. I think in Philadelphia, they understand that. Every coach in Philly, when they start losing games, and then, look, every town's different. We know about Philly. It's a hardcore sports town. Fans are incredibly passionate. They feel it's their team. And that's great. That's what fandom is. But, any coach that starts to lose, look, they still think that, if you listen to the radio here, I don't very often, but I've certainly seen it because it's all on social media. They still think that Jonathan Gannon, their defensive coordinator, they still think he's an idiot and that they're just waiting for it not to work. And I guarantee if the Eagles were to lose this game and the Chiefs put up 30, that's what you're going to see, that, Jonathan Gannon is an idiot. And, that's the way it works. And that's okay. That's fans. That's the idea,
Keep me in business.
Yeah, without question. But I think Andy Reid, pretty much people recognize that Andy Reid is a great football coach. What he's done in his career, look, how many guys have done that, Buck? That's really hard to do.
It's a select few. I know Mike Vrabel, just on a local level, Mike Vrabel speaks of Andy Reid with the highest respect, and I know he is not the only coach.
And I've been around Andy. I know him a little bit. In fact, when he first got to Philly, my wife and I went out to dinner with Andy and Tammy Reid, and he would probably tell the story because, he has no problem telling stories about food. But we went to a steakhouse in Philly, and he ordered a baked potato, and they said, "What do you want on?" And he said, "Loaded."
He is true to himself. Yeah. There's no question.
Yeah, we've all seen that clip where he gets the cheeseburger. Yeah, he has no problem with that. But no, he's a great football coach. And a great guy. That's the other thing is, I think if you talk to people, even Mike Vrabel, as you said, people will say he's a terrific guy.
Well, it'll be a spectacular chess match between these two teams. Greg, I know you're heading out there tomorrow early.
I am.
Have a safe trip to the Super Bowl. Enjoy yourself out there. I'm surprised to not see you on at media night with people dressed up in banana suits and asking Nick Sirianni if the Super Bowl is a must-win game. That was an actual question that was asked of the Eagles.
Yes, I saw that, and I thought a really thoughtful question, didn't you?
I did an equally thoughtful response from the Eagles.
Yeah. Well, I will see your buddies from on 3HL out there. I'll see Don, I'll see Slay, and I'll see Brent. So, we'll chat with them. But I'm heading out tomorrow, and it should be. The nice thing is it'll be 70 degrees.
It's 70 degrees here at home, but I bet it'll be beautiful in Arizona. Greg, when next we talk, it'll be time to get into some draft stuff. We'll probably recap.
I've been grinding away, Buck. I've been grinding away.
I know it, buddy. Yeah, the grind never stops. That's why we love you. I'll talk to you next week, and thank you for the time as always.
All right, Buck. Appreciate it.